Hi, I'm Tom Brookshire.
And I'm Pat Summerall, and we're now just one game away from the halfway point of the NFL season. And things look quite different in the two Western divisions, Tom.
Boy, the NFC West is unbelievable. The Rams unbeaten, 6-0, and they have a big 3-game lead.
Looks like San Francisco and Atlanta, the two teams that are close to chasing them, I guess you could say, in spite of that 3-game lead, have finally put things together. The 49ers finally got some offense last week, and so did the Falcons. They're capable of scoring a lot of points. In the AFC, Kansas City and Oakland are tied, both 3-2-1. What about that?
Well, I think we have to worry about the Denver Broncos. I think they proved that their 2-3-1 mark and puts them very close one game out, makes them very much a threat. They're a very young, aggressive, mauling-type football team.
You've been impressed with Charlie Johnson, too.
Charlie Johnson just looks like he's found a home in a mile-high city. But I will say this, the Oakland Raiders still have a tremendous amount of talent on both sides of the offensive line of scrimmage.
They certainly do. Now, in the AFC, games you'll be seeing today, Kansas City's 14-6 loss to Cincinnati. The Bengals are playing well.
Well, they may be one of the most solid teams in the entire American Football Conference. They look real good. How about Atlanta just knocking San Diego right out of it?
Well, as I said a minute ago, I think they've really finally got it together on offense. San Francisco also with a 40-0 win over New Orleans. We'll show you those. And Los Angeles triumph over Green Bay 24-7. And Tom, what about our featured performer of the week?
Our featured performer of the week in the West, Pat, is number 12, John Brody of the San Francisco 49ers.
This footage is from last year. Brody is 6'1", 200 pounds, in his 17th year from Stanford, where he broke all the passing records.
He's been around so long that you and I both recall playing against him, right?
He's one of the few.
He's also a great golfer, and he plays some tennis, doesn't he?
Just a fine athlete. He holds, Tom, 17 San Francisco records, including more than 30,000 yards. Only 3 quarterbacks have more, and only 2 quarterbacks have completed more passes, John Unitas and Y.A. Tittle.
Of course, last year he came off the ankle injury and did a great job against the Vikings in that last game to win the NFC West title.
Got 2 touchdowns after he came in, the last one with just 25 seconds to go, as they beat Minnesota 20-17 for their 3rd straight NFC Western title.
So far this season, the most unpredictable team in the NFL has probably been the Atlanta Falcons. 3 times they've scored no touchdowns at all, and 3 times they've scored more than 40 points. Each week the question seems to be, will it be feast or will it be famine?
Dutch Van Brocklin and Swede Svari were teammates on the Rams 20 years ago, and as old friends, they could compare notes on the fans' attitude toward them as coaches. Last week, in the first official meeting of the Atlanta Falcons and San Diego Chargers, it was obvious from the outset that this was not to be the Chargers' day. No matter what the Chargers tried, no matter how simple, it backfired. "36 times, rookie Dan Fouts tested the NFL's top-rated pass defense. 23 times he failed to connect. And 4 times the Falcons intercepted and returned to within easy scoring range. Number 22, cornerback Roland Lawrence, a rookie from Tabor, enjoyed the longest play of the day, 81 yards. The Falcons scored at least 1 touchdown in every quarter. The first on a jaunt through the middle by Art Malone, number 25. The next 2 touchdowns were by Malone's running mate, Dave Hampton, number 43. Two final touchdowns were put across by 240-pound Eddie Ray, number 44, as the feast or famine Falcons rolled to another lopsided victory, 41-0.
The New Orleans Saints were in San Francisco last Sunday, Pat, determined to match the longest win streak in the club's history.
After the way they beat the Lions 2 weeks ago, Tom, 3 victories in a row was certainly not out of the question.
There were some mighty unusual performances in Candlestick Park last Sunday. But the most unexpected one was the manner in which the New Orleans defense stymied the Steve Spurrier-led 49ers offense. For the greater part of the first half, the best Spurrier could do is complete 5 of 13 for a sputtering 23 yards. Even behind excellent protection, Spurrier's arm failed him as he hung up his first of 2 interceptions. Safety Tom Myers got under this one and turned the ball over to the Saints offense, a unit which has a mere 61 points to its credit. Its problem is rather obvious. It's called bad blocking. With 4:52 left in the scoreless first half, 49er coach Dick Nolan gave 17-year veteran John Brody the reins. Brody immediately confirmed the decision with a quick out to Danny Abramowitz. The play covered 54 yards and the 49ers were suddenly refortified. One play later, Brody led Abramowitz into the end zone for a spectacular catch. It was a sweet hello from Abramowitz to his former teammates, and for the 49ers, the start of something big. The rout commenced with the beginning of the third period when Howard Stevens, looking to pass, fumbled instead. Brody immediately threw to Vic Washington, who made a tremendous stab at the ball on the 1-yard line. Wayne Coleman's late shot cut Vic's ensuing touchdown run in half to make it 17-0. Brody, completing 8 of 9 for the day, led Kenny Willard on a 16-yard ramble. Two plays later, it was Vic Washington powering over to complete this 56-yard march. In the next series, defensive end Tommy Hart put the hurt on Archie. Bill Belk picked the ball up and the 49ers were knocking once again. Nine-year veteran Ken Willard slammed into the New Orleans goal line to boost the score 31-0. Third stringer Joe Reed added 6 more to the tally on this fourth quarter strike to Ted Quallett. Final score 40-0, which left the 49ers record an even 500 and recommitted the Saints to the Western Division cellar.
The Los Angeles Rams were out to make it 6 in a row last Sunday against the Green Bay Packers. And that number 6 is all the more impressive when you realize that just last year the Rams could manage only 6 wins for the entire season.
When you're hot, you're hot. And this year's edition of the Los Angeles Rams has something for all Southern Californians to cheer about. With a solid 3-game lead in their division and the highest scoring offense in the NFL, the Rams are the most talked about show in town. After a scoreless first quarter, David Ray lobbed this 3-pointer over from 44 yards out. Scott Hunter, hounded all afternoon by the relentless Los Angeles rush, lost more than his composure on this play. John Hadel, the NFL's top-rated passer, connected with Jack Snow for 6, but the score was nullified by a holding penalty. It was much more costly to the Pack, however, as All-Pro candidate Willie Buchanan busted his leg on the play. The Rams' rapacious defense held the entire Packer offense to 63 yards. Just before the half, John Hadel and Harold Jackson teamed up once again. This time it was for keeps, and the sun-drenched crowd in the Coliseum was obviously having a ball. The Packers got a break at the start of the third quarter, and MacArthur Lane pitched a six-pointer to Barry Smith. With the score close at 10-7, the Rams started a push for a little breathing room. Jim Bertelsen uncorked this 24-yard run to set up another David Ray field goal. Highlighting the Rams' final 80-yard scoring drive was this strike to veteran Jack Snow. With victory assured at 20-7, the Ram defense in the person of number 89, Fred Dreyer, was just trying to do his job. First, it was Scott Hunter thrown for a 12-yard loss and sacked in the end zone. Minutes later, Jim Delgazo fell victim to the same fate from the same fellow, Fred Dreyer. Out on the field, Fred was taking it all very nonchalantly. But the 4 points he singularly added to the final score came in a manner no other defensive man in the entire 53-year history of the NFL has matched. And by game's end, the unassuming Mr. Dreyer had apparently won himself a great deal more than just a game ball.
Well, Tom, the New England Patriots have now won 2 out of their last 3 and may just now be adjusting to the style of their new coach, Chuck Fairbanks.
It could be, Pat, but the way they're winning and the scores by which they're winning are certainly not reminiscent of Fairbanks' old Oklahoma teams.
Thus far this year, the Chicago Bears have shown very little in the way of improvement, which surprises a lot of people, but none more so than portly Abe Gibran, the Bears head coach. Last week, New England was in town, and the Windy City Warriors were ready to change Patriot quarterback Jim Plunkett's passing plans. But Plunkett improvised nicely and got his team in close enough to take a 3-0 lead. The Bears then came out throwing. Bobby Douglas to Joe Moore, swinging out of the backfield, accounted for good yardage. Then Douglas took a jaunt of his own to drive Chicago closer to the lead. Finally, Douglas to Earl Thomas made it 7-3 for the Bears. The Patriots continued to go with their most effective play, which led to another field goal, narrowing the gap to 7-6. Then Sam Cunningham began to bam the Bears as his running aimed New England toward another score. Plunkett to number 18, Randy Vataha, ended with the rabbit almost losing his ears. But undaunted, Plunkett continued to mess around in his pocket before going for the big gain. This time to number 86, Bob Windsor. In the end, it was Jim Plunkett again, this time on a keeper as New England bettered the befuddled Bears 13-10.
Attempting to regroup after only 1 win in 5 starts, the Baltimore Colts looked for and found new leadership as they took on the Detroit Lions last Sunday.
The Colts called on fifth-year signal caller Marty Dumrays for the spark of leadership that was needed to ignite the sagging Baltimore offense. In his first start since last season, Dumrays proved he had the ignition switch to turn the Colts around. The 6'4", 220-pound Dumrays rallied early, fueling Baltimore both on the ground and in the air. Dumrays powered over for the first Baltimore score, capping a well-executed 88-yard drive on the 14th play. Following a Baltimore field goal, the Colts appeared to be on the move once again. Lem Barney's recovery set up the first of 2 Jim O'Brien field goals, which left Detroit trailing at the half 10-6. Greg Landry brought the Lions roaring back, running the veer option to perfection. Six plays later, the option clicked for 6, and Detroit owned their first lead of the game. The Lions' celebration proved short-lived as Dumrays passed up an intended short receiver, firing instead for Glenn Doughty to regain the lead. Following a missed Detroit field goal, Dumrays unleashed a strike between the Detroit zone for 30 yards to Cotton's Spire. From 14 yards out, Don McCauley got the call, responding with a Colt touchdown. A George Hunt field goal upped the Baltimore advantage to 29-13 late in the 4th quarter, setting the stage for a final Detroit flurry. Alty Taylor's 60-yard kickoff return set up a short Greg Landry touchdown 5 plays later. With only 41 seconds remaining, Landry drove the Lions to the Colt 5, where he found tight end Charlie Sanders for the final Detroit touchdown. The comeback fell just short as the Colts prevailed in a 29-27 win over the Detroit Lions.
Pat, it seems that every one of the 70,000 plus in Miami came to see if O.J. Simpson could strut his stuff again last week.
Probably true, Tom. And before the game started, the Orange Bowl looked more like Hialeah racetrack than a football stadium.
Like railbirds clocking a morning workout, they came early to study a real thoroughbred go through his paces. Could O.J. Simpson outrun the shadow of Jim Brown's rushing record? Could the juice keep flowing against the world champion Dolphins? On the game's 3rd play, Miami quarterback Bob Greasy lost the ball and the Bills recovered. But Buffalo could not budge the Dolphins, and they settled for a field goal and a 3-0 lead. Confident with the lead and buoyed by the awesome power locked in the white shoes, Buffalo attacked the no-name defense. But the wings were torn off their elusive butterfly, as the no-names swarmed over the juice. At the end of the half, a frustrated O.J. Simpson had gained only 12 yards and 6 carries. By game's end, he had but 55, and bruised and beaten with an ankle dressed in swaddling clothes, the juice had stopped flowing for the Buffalo Bills. Miami asserted their dominance on the passes of Bob Greasy to tight end Jim Mandich, number 88. This combination gave the Dolphins the lead for the first time at 10-3 when Greasy found Mandich floating free in the end zone. Behind airtight protection, the combination clicked again. As simple as 1, 2, 3. Blocking plus Mandich plus Greasy equaled a 17-3 Miami lead. By halftime, the game was a rout as Mercury Morris cut inside of number 66 Larry Little and exploded for a touchdown. Leading 24-3, Bob Greasy was gluttonous for more points, but his bomb to Mercury Morris nestled nicely into the hands of cornerback Dwight Harrison of the Bills. When Harrison's legs turned to molasses, he attempted the old cornerback-to-cornerback handoff to Tony Green, number 43. But that old playground trick didn't work, and neither did anything else for the Bills when they turned to reserve quarterback Dennis Shaw, number 16. Buffalo was surrounded and stomped by a nightmare wearing white shirts. For 5 weeks, the Bills had not faced a team of championship mettle. On the 6th, they had played with the big boys and lost 27-6.
We'll be right back with the second half of This Week in Pro Football following station identification.
Well, Pat, last week for the first time since 1965, the Dallas Cowboys entered a game after 2 straight losses.
But they got well again in a hurry, Tom, against the New York Giant team that's fallen flat on its face after being undefeated in preseason.
Bogged down with a lackluster 1-3-1 record, Alex Webster's Giants hoped to salvage their season against powerful Dallas. But it was not to be, as the Cowboys' rushing legions were unstoppable. Walt Garrison started his first game of 1973 and gained nearly 80 yards, while Calvin Hill, the NFC's leading rusher, amassed nearly 160 yards running and receiving. The Cowboys' first score resulted from perfect execution. Watch middle linebacker Jim Files move with Walt Garrison. With the middle vacated, guard Blaine Nye, number 61, blew out Dan Goish, and Hill burst in for 6 points. But New York hung tough and tied the game on a Norm Snead connection with Bob Tucker. The Giants drove for the lead, but Larry Cole, number 63, ripped in on Norm Snead. Cole's fumble recovery led directly to a Garrison touchdown, and Dallas led 17-7 at the half. Early in the third quarter, Snead hooked up with Bob Grimm, and the lead was shaved to 3 points, 17-14. Then the Doomsday defense went to work. Their defensive ends pinched in and punched out Norm Snead. Then good fortune beckoned when a high snap to Jim McCann was converted into a block punt by Billy Joe Dupree. Dupree's block triggered a one-man show by the rookie tight end from Michigan State. With Dallas leading 31-14, Dupree cashed in on a tight end screen. Dupree's touchdown made the score 38-14, and Doomsday bolted down victory number 4. Leroy Jordan's hit on Ron Johnson brought up another McCann punt, another Dupree block, and a touchdown for D.D. Lewis, number 50. Another angle shows that Dupree boiled in clean, then extended himself over blocker Jim Files to reject McCann's punt. Lewis's touchdown salted away the victory, but the New York Giants refused to quit. Back after a one-week sabbatical, Randy Johnson proved he was true blue by throwing 2 touchdown passes. The heroics were too little, too late, as Dallas won 45-28, remained just one game off the pace of the Washington Redskins in the NFC East.
While the Dallas Cowboys were battling to stay in contention in the NFC East, 2 other NFC Eastern rivals, the Washington Redskins and St. Louis Cardinals, were involved in a grudge match of their own.
In the season's second week, Pat, the Cardinals stunned the defending NFC champions. But last Sunday, they found out that beating a George Allen team twice in one season isn't quite so easy.
Amid the hostile emotions of RFK Stadium, the St. Louis Cardinals found themselves facing the awesome Redskin defense, minus several key offensive regulars. With running back Terry Metcalf and lineman Roger Finney and Ernie McMillan unable to play because of injuries, Jim Hart found himself in trouble early. Dave Robinson's interception and return to the 1 needed only a Charlie Haraway dive on the next play to give the Redskins the lead. With Billy Kilmer subbing for the injured Sonny Jurgensen, the Redskins' offense started to roll. Holding the hot hand, Kilmer dealt another arching spiral over the Cardinals' secondary to Charlie Taylor for the payoff and a 14-3 lead. In the final seconds of the first half, Hart again found himself in trouble as a routine flare pass to Donnie Anderson proved costly. Chris Hanberger's fumble return to the Cardinals' 6-yard line had the Redskins threatening again with only 16 seconds left in the half. Cool hand Phil needed but one shot to net another Redskin TD, this time lobbing to reserve tight end Mike Hancock. Behind Kilmer, the Redskins had amassed 245 yards through the air and owned a comfortable 21-6 halftime advantage. Jim Hart opened the second half with some aerial fireworks of his own. Mel Gray's 69-yard touchdown reception brought the Cardinals back, narrowing the Washington lead to 8 points. But for the rest of the afternoon, the Cardinal cannon was to be silenced. Having completed passes totaling 239 yards, Hart unloaded an off-balance shot, which Mike Bass intercepted and returned for the final Washington tally. The Redskins wound up a 31-13 winner on the scoreboard and remained the winner amid a fiery post-game discussion.
Last week, the New York Jets, who are supposedly broken beyond repair, perpetrated a big scare against a bunch of tough guys from a Pennsylvania steel town.
The signs in Pittsburgh seemed to be a little premature last Sunday as the New York Jets defense came with larceny in their hearts. Terry Bradshaw rifled one pass direct to number 22, Burgess Owens, and the first-year man brought it into scoring range. From the 28, Jets quarterback Bill Demery hit Richard Castor, whose touchdown coupled with an early New York score made it 14-6 Jets. Upset time. But then Steeler pride came alive, and even Joe Namath must have been glad he was on the sidelines. The Steelers' defense pressured Demery out of the pocket and tracked him relentlessly. Then Steeler offensive pride came to the fore as a healthy Franco Harris took off for 102 yards, and it was 1972 all over again. Then it was another man from the past, number 5, Terry Hanratty, whose pass to Ron Shanklin seemingly salted the win away. However, the Jets weren't about to lay down as number 26, Margene Atkins, came up with an extra effort return. But in the end, Bill Demery was done in by Steeler pride in the form of number 23, Mike Wagner. His interception and return set up a 2-yard Franco Harris score, which made the final score 26-14 in favor of the Steel Gang and their iron pride.
The Steelers are still in first place, Pat, but there are a couple of good ball clubs across the state line in Ohio. They're both within striking distance, just one game behind.
Paul Brown's Cincinnati Bengals have already beaten the Steelers once, Tom, and last week they looked strong again as they prepared for this week's showdown in Pittsburgh.
Some of the so-called experts said that the Bengals had gone to the dogs, but now Cincinnati is huskier and cagier than ever. Last week against Kansas City, all was quiet until Lamar Parrish fielded a punt, shifted gears, and took off. Parrish's return set up a play that Paul Brown calls the old Massillon High Special. Bob Trumpy's touchdown gave Cincinnati a 7-3 lead just before halftime. But in the third period, it looked like the Bengals had lost the lead. Mike Sensabaugh's run was nullified, however, and the Bengals took a slim 7-6 advantage into the final period. Twice in the fourth quarter, conference leading passer Lynn Dawson had the Chiefs on the doorstep, but both times they came away empty, once due to a fumble at the 1-yard line. Cincinnati put the game away with its running attack, for which everybody blocks, including a rookie wide receiver, number 85, first draft choice, Isaac Curtis. Once in the open, number 19, Essex Johnson, could be brought down only by an extremely fast defender with an extremely long reach. For the day, Johnson rushed for 92 yards, but he was topped by his running mate, Charles Booby Clark, who gained over 100 for the second consecutive week and scored the touchdown that enabled the Bengals to defeat a division leader for the second straight game. This week against Pittsburgh, 3 in a row would give Cincinnati a share of first place in the AFC Central.
Those other contenders in the AFC Central, the Cleveland Browns, have been depending on their defense to win. But last week in Sid Gilman's Houston debut, the Browns broke out of their offensive slump with a bang.
At Cleveland's huge stadium on Lake Erie, the winless Houston Oilers were led for the first time by Sid Gilman. A few days before, Dapper Sid had replaced Bill Peterson, thereby adding the duties of interim head coach to his title of general manager. Houston had never beaten the Browns, who were coming off a tough Monday night loss to the Miami Dolphins. But unfortunately for Gilman, this single touchdown from Dan Pastorini to Eddie Hinton was all he could cheer about on this bright, beautiful October day. The new look in Cleveland this season is defense. In fact, the Browns are ranked first in the entire American Conference. With the exception of this one touchdown, Cleveland so thoroughly stopped the Houston attack they were limited to merely 4 first downs all day. The Browns romped for nearly 300 yards on the ground. One reason was the return of Big Bo Scott at the fullback position for the first time this season. Scott's running and especially his blocking opened the way for Cleveland's 2 scat backs, Billy LaFleur and Greg Pruitt, number 34. Pruitt continually sliced and slanted around the Houston flanks for good yardage. The tiny Pruitt's replacement was number 26, Billy LaFleur, who is just as small and almost as fast. This awesome display of running depth benefited no one more than Leroy Kelly. Old workhorse Leroy carried the ball only 6 times, but when he was in the game, it was apparent the rest had really helped. He looked like the Leroy Kelly of old. Kelly scored Cleveland's first touchdown on the patented sweep. He once ran so often and so well. The running game opened up the Oiler defense for the passing attack, which had been disappointing so far. Mike Phipps hit on 2 well-thrown bombs to Frank Pitts. Both, though, were negated by penalties. However, Phipps scored 2 touchdowns himself. Later, he hit Pitts again for a long score and discovered Fair Hooker, who ducked his defender, then tightrope down the left sideline for a 21-yard touchdown. It added up to the Browns' biggest offensive explosion of the year and the Oilers' 6th consecutive loss. Sid Gilman's return to coaching was not a happy one.
Last week up in the Northland, that gang of purple bruisers were somewhat taken aback by a team with a 1-3-1 record, Tom.
Well, Pat, the Vikings' close call came as no surprise to me because the Philadelphia Eagles are on the rise and a lot better team than the ledger reads.
Last week in Minnesota, everything was beautiful. The day, the girls, and above all, the Vikings' 5-0 record. And it was the 5-0 record that filled the Eagles' Roman Gabriel with tenseness before the game. Unfortunately for Philadelphia, the tenseness carried over into the game, and in the early going, they looked like the pre-Roman edition of the Eagles. On the other hand, the Vikings were uncharacteristically flamboyant in getting their first score on a 44-yard reverse by John Gilliam. And if you want to see something uncharacteristic on the replay, watch the guy leading the blocking, for it's none other than quarterback Fran Tarkenton, number 10. While razzle-dazzle is not a Viking trademark, intimidation is, and it appeared to be working extremely well in the case of Roman Gabriel. So while the Vikes kept their opponents floundering for a handhold, Fran Tarkenton kept laying it in the hands of John Gilliam. This completion set up another Gilliam touchdown, and it looked like Minnesota in a stroll. Even when Philly did get it going, they ran into trouble. Harold Carmichael garnered a rare hurdling penalty. Then on a beautiful Gabriel to Carmichael pass, the penalty flag hit even harder than the spike. You'd think the Eagles would have given up, but they don't do that anymore. Instead, they sucked it up, busted in, and sacked Fran Tarkenton Viking style. Then Genghis Khan style, number 84, Richard Harris, pillaged this play. The Eagles flew high on the wings of number 27, Poe James, and turned Minnesota's stroll into a run for their life. James continued to roll, and again Philadelphia threatened. A bruising end around by Charlie Young brought the Eagles close at the end, 28-21. And if the game had been a little bit longer, the Vikes would have been in big trouble. As it was, Coach Bud Grant must have left saying to himself, "Who are those guys?"
Well, I'm sorry to say it, but it's prediction time, Pat. We've got to go through it. You're beginning to roll me over.
Well, I think we both got reason to be proud, though, Tom. I'm 22-11, and you're 18-15. Both of us over 500. In the NFL, that's tough. But there's some tough ones coming up now. Atlanta at San Francisco.
Atlanta at San Francisco. I think young Lee might be one of the good young quarterbacks that's got a little bit of experience, too. I'm going to go with the Falcons to beat San Francisco at San Fran.
That's going way out on a limb, but I really agree with you. I'm going to go with Atlanta, too. L.A. at Minnesota, both teams 6-0. What do you think?
I've just seen the Rams one time live and the Vikings the same. I'm going to have to go with the Rams. I think for a 40-man squad right now, they're a better team.
I saw them last week against Green Bay, and they are a very solid, well-coached football team. Minnesota's at home, though, and they're pretty tough to beat up there, so I'll go with the Vikes.
They'll have a lot of tailgaters rooting them on.
They sure will. Kansas City's at Buffalo in the AFC. What do you think?
Well, I think O.J. Simpson, if he has a sprained ankle, even slightly, it's going to really make that team throw the ball, and I don't believe Buffalo's quite ready to do that. I'm going to go for the Chiefs, as old as they might be, to come back and knock off Buffalo.
I'll go with Kansas City, too. At any rate, we'll be back next week to show you highlights of all those games and show you what happens around the NFL. I'm Pat Summerall.
And I'm Tom Brookshire, and we'll see you next week.
Brought to you by West Clocks, a division of General Time, a Tally Industries company. Promotional consideration provided by Western Motels. There are over 1,250 Best Western Motels located in more than 900 cities throughout the United States, Canada, and Mexico. And by American Airlines, if the sun is shining there, chances are American flies there. From the Caribbean to California to the South Pacific, American Airlines to the good life. Program materials for This Week in Pro Football traveled via REA Air Express.